Good evening. Good evening and welcome to this Shropshire Humanist event. My name is Simon Nightingale. I'm Chair of Shropshire Humanists, and it's my great pleasure to welcome our speaker for this evening, Andrew Moffatt. I'm not going to tell you about him. He's going to tell you about his life, which is a fascinating life and an inspiring one. Andrew.
Simon, thanks everyone for having me today. It's really nice to be with you. So I'm going to talk for about half an hour about No Outsiders and about how it started and what its aims are, and we can have some Q&A as well afterwards. So No Outsiders. Well, first of all, why am I doing it? I'm a teacher. I've been teaching since 1995. I've been a lot of time spent in behaviour units, children have been excluded, PRUs, and I'm currently a Year 4 teacher. I'm assistant head at a school in Birmingham, and since January, a teacher left, and they're going to get a supply in for 6 months. But I said, well, you know what, I can do that. I'll go back in the classroom. So for the first time in 7 years, I'm a classroom teacher. I'm exhausted. I don't know how the teachers do it. I've been assistant head at a classroom for the last 7 years, but you know what? It's absolutely wonderful. I love it, and so that's what I do day to day. So why do this work? Well, when I was growing up in school, in the 80s and 70s, I definitely felt like an outsider. I didn't fit in with the other boys. And in the 70s and 80s, there were very clear messages about how to be a boy, and how to be a girl, and I was never very good at football. I liked ABBA. I liked the Eurovision Song Contest. I didn't know. People would say, "What football team do you support?" I have no idea. And it's very difficult. I was actually an outsider, actually. But do you know what made a huge difference to me? I can remember there was a teacher called Mr. Penson, and he was the alpha male of middle school. So this was when I was like 9 years old, and I was put in his class, and I was dreading it, absolutely dreading it, because he was a football person. All the boys loved him. It was all football stuff. He walked around in shorts the whole time, and I was thinking, well, he's not going to like me. He's not going to even know who I am. And I can remember, just dreading going to his class. But the last day of term of the summer, before we went into summer holidays, before September, I can remember bumping into him in the corridor, and he stopped me and he said, "You're Andrew Moffatt." And I was astonished he knew who I was. And he said, "I can't wait till you're in my class next year. It's going to be a great year for us." Now that's changed my whole life, because suddenly I thought, well, Mr. Penson, A, knows who I am, and B, he wants me in his class. And just that feeling, I've suddenly, for the first time, really, I felt actually I belonged, I had that sense of belonging. That's what you need children to feel, isn't it, in schools, that sense of belonging, because some children are definitely feeling like outsiders, in their school years. So, why are we doing this work? You see, children are not cocooned, are they? They're not wrapped in cotton wool. They hear about the world around them. They'll have heard about Brexit. They'll have heard about, Black Lives Matters. They'll know about COVID. They'll have heard arguments about, is it a hoax? Do you have to wear masks? You can't tell me to wear a mask, all that kind of stuff. They'll know about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and they'll know that, for the first time ever in history, you have a female vice president in the US, and a woman of color as well. Why has it taken till this long to have a female vice president? So all the time they are exploring the world around them. And in my class, we have daily conversations. We watch Newsround every day for 5 minutes, and we talk about it. I deliberately leave the classroom to go and get my coffee while it's on, and when I come back I say, right, tell me the headlines, and we discuss the headlines in Newsround, because children are interested, in the world around them. But also the background to this is that there's a huge rise in hate crime at the moment. Actually the last 5 years, I've got figures here, hate crime has doubled in the last 5 years, England and Wales. Homophobic hate crime, a rise of 55% in London in the last 5 years. So well, what's that about? Where's that come from? And what are we doing about it? Because as teachers and as primary school teachers, we can't just stick our heads in the sand with this. We're preparing our children for life in modern Britain. We're sending them out into this world, and what is education for in the end? Is it to make the world a better place? Can we enforce? Can we influence change in the future? Can we reduce hate crime in the future? Because if we're not doing it in schools, well, who is doing it? whose responsibility is it to create citizens of the future? You may have seen in Solihull last summer, a 12-year-old boy was arrested for sending racist tweets to a Crystal Palace football player. 12 years old, sending racist tweets. So what's he learning in school about difference and diversity? You know, what is the school doing about that? It's not just about English and maths, is it? You know, citizenship is the key, isn't it? So I talk about schools having an alternative narrative, to the narrative that children might be hearing outside of school gates, which I have no control over. I have no control over a narrative of children who are outside of school gates. Now, they might be hearing a great inclusive narrative, absolutely, but they might not, and we can't leave it to chance. So just in case children aren't hearing an inclusive message, the message inside the school gates has got to be really, really clear, really loud, and very simple. And the message is diversity is wonderful. Diversity is fantastic. Do you know what the best thing about our school is? The best thing, in fact, I said this to my class only yesterday when a child had laughed at a Muslim woman in a headscarf. It was quite a white school, you know, and it was a isolated incident, but it happened on the playground at home time. So we had a big discussion. Do you know what the best thing about this class is? I said why I chose this class, because I love this class because we're all different. Look at us. We have, you know, different skin. You know, I know some people in here are Muslim, some are Christians, some have no religion. We have people with disabilities. We have someone who used to live in Germany in this class, you know, who can speak German. What a brilliant class this is. Wouldn't it be boring if we were all the same? Wouldn't that be boring? The best thing about our class and our school is that everyone is different, but no one is left out, you know, and we can learn from each other and talk to each other and be friends with each other. And that's the narrative that we've got to be having in schools, just in case any children are hearing a divisive message outside school. And the reason why I like the term no outsiders is because a 4-year-old can understand it. A 4-year-old understands what it means to be left out on the playground, and no one wants to be left out. So if you're saying in our school, there's no outsiders, no one's left out, it's a simple message that every child can understand. And very generally, if you go around my school and ask children, what's no outsiders mean? They'll all be able to tell you, but they'll have different answers depending on their age. A 4-year-old will say, we all play together. In year 2 or year 3, they'll be saying, well, we have different skin, black skin or brown skin or white skin, you know, different religion, but no one's left out. We all play together. By year 4, certainly by year 5, they'll be bringing in being gay or lesbian. In my class of year 4, they mention the word gay and lesbian, you know, in this context. By year 5, we're mentioning trans, and we're mentioning the Equality Act and British values, and, you know, and all that kind of stuff. But it all starts with 5-year-olds confidently saying, we play together. That's what No Outsiders is about. And I base this work on the Equality Act, which is a great piece of legislation, which makes it very clear that we can't pick and choose who we're comfortable with talking about and who we're not comfortable with talking about. We have to talk about everybody, you know, so we can't miss groups out. We would never say we're not going to mention people with disabilities because we don't like that. You know, we would never say that. You know, we talk about everyone. You know, the thing about the Equality Act is that you teach in context. You know, you don't have, you know, one day we teach about, you know, race, the next day you teach about disability, next day you teach about LGBT. You know, you have lessons about equality where you bring in difference all the time. I have got it wrong in the past, and I'll talk about getting it wrong in the past. I don't include the protest 2 years of getting it wrong. I'll come to those in a moment, but I definitely got it wrong 7, 8 years ago. And there was a headline in the press. I think it was a Daily Telegraph that started it off. Well, it could be in the Times, is one of those anyway. And it got picked up, and the headline was, I've got it here: gay Birmingham teacher resigns after parents complained they'd not want to teach their children. Now, that was a school in Birmingham where I was doing this work, and then it wasn't called No Outsiders. Then it was called, it was an LGBT resource, and it was called Challenging Homophobia in Primary Schools. Here it is. It was never published, but it's like sort of a Birmingham City Council published it, and it was put into schools, but there was no funding behind it. There's no trading. Schools just did it if they wanted to. Hardly anyone did it, to be fair. And I wrote that in 2007. And I was doing it in my school in Birmingham, sort of quietly. I didn't involve parents. I thought parents might not like it. It's a very diverse school, and you know, I thought maybe I wasn't sure how to talk to parents about it, so I just didn't talk to parents about it. And I sort of felt at a time, well, why should I talk to parents about it? Why should I make a fuss about it? I don't talk to parents about how we teach geography or teach science, so why tell them about this? You know, why bring it up? Anyway, you know, the law's on my side. Why shouldn't I talk about LGBT stuff? But, you know, I realise that's quite a naive stance to take, because what it does acknowledge is that not everyone's on the same page. And it's far better to bring parents with you than to have surprises. So what happened there was I was pootling along doing this resource, and then I decided after 4 years to come out in the school. I came out in an assembly. Now, you know, I'm in favour of teachers coming out. I think it's good to come out, but, you know, learn from my mistakes. Don't do it in an assembly. There's better ways to do it. Problem in an assembly is that, you know, 200 people, you can't really have proper respectful discussions about it. You know, it's just the wrong place to do it. And two weeks later, a teacher in my school did one of my lessons based on a book called Tango Makes Three about two gay penguins. A letter came in the following day: "You're doing gay lessons." I didn't know about this. What are these gay lessons? I want to take my child out of lessons for the future. And what happened the following day? 11 letters came in. "You're doing gay lessons. We didn't know about this." You know, and the problem was, if you call a resource transient homophobia in primary schools, it's very hard to then say, well, it's not gay lessons, because, well, it's not about race, is it? It's not about gender. It's not about disability. You know, it's what it says on the tin. You know, so I was on a losing battle really there, and that got quite sort of nasty. And the problem was that I hold my hands up. I felt responsible. I did it wrong. I should have got in front of it and our parents meeting first to say, here's what we're doing, you know, here's why we're doing it. But it was a surprise. It was a shock, and it did get quite nasty. There was a call for me to apologize publicly for coming out, you know, because people didn't understand what it was all about, you know, and people were very threatened. So I did leave, but I didn't just walk out. And I wasn't asked to resign. I didn't resign. I just felt this is the wrong place for me. I've messed up here. I need to move. The school didn't want me to move, but I thought it was the right thing to do. So I applied for another job. I got it, and then I resigned. Hence where the headline comes from. It's actually fake news. It's not the case that I resigned because I was pushed out. What I did was I applied for a job, I got it, and then I resigned. That's what you do, isn't it? You can't have two jobs. So there you go. Anyway, where do you move to next? So I felt embarrassed about that experience. I felt like I really messed up. So I wanted to put it right. So in those discussions with parents, those awful meetings I was having with, you know, 50 parents in a school hall shouting and being very upset, I felt it was the Muslim community around in that school that I felt the loudest in those meetings, that seen them to be the most threatened by this. So I thought, well, I need to work with the community work. I can make the most difference. I need to learn from that community. I need to talk to parents and to find out how to do this work successfully, make it accessible for everyone. Because otherwise, you have a postcode lottery, don't you? Where if you're in this area, you can do LGBT work, but if you're in this area, you can't because parents won't like it. Well, that's no good. We need to make it accessible for all communities. So I sought a school basically with a majority Muslim population, and there was a school called Parkfield School in Birmingham, 99% Muslim. So I applied for the assistant head there, and I talked to the head teacher before I went and said, "Here's why I want to come here. You know, what do you think?" And I remember her saying, "Well, it's not what the job is, but you know, I'm interested. I'm interested. We can work together. I'm interested in your work." I remember saying, "That's not what your job is, you know, but I'm happy for you. You know, we can talk." So got the job, did assistant head stuff. First 6 months didn't do anything at all, and then I started to think, like, how can I make this work? And the first thing I did was I scrapped the old lesson plans, and that's when I wrote No Outsiders. And the whole point of No Outsiders was it was no longer just LGBT focused. It was about everyone taught in context, you know, because there's not one characteristic or difference that is more important than any others, but also not one that's less important. So you're teaching context all the time, you know, and like I say before, you don't have like the black lesson and then the gay lesson, then the disabled lesson. You have equality lessons, you know, all the time, so you can bring in difference. And I also based it all on picture books as well, because I thought the major change from this, apart from the fact it's about everybody, the other major change is that I've got to work with parents. Before we do any work on this, we're going to engage with our parents. We're going to get people around a table. We're going to say, right, how do we do this? And I thought, if I base it on picture books, I imagine literally sitting in a room with parents around a table, showing them, here's how we do it. Read the books. You know, let me show you. There's no hidden agenda or scary stuff here. I can literally show you the books. And it just worked brilliantly. And we had 11 meetings initially about No Outsiders, where I really listened to concerns and we forged the way forward. And the way we forced it forward, the sticking point for our community was parents were saying, well, in Islam, it's forbidden to be gay. Are you going to teach children it's okay to be gay? That was a sticking point. And that's really hard, isn't it? Because what are you going to say? If I just say, well, yes, I am, then, well, we're not going to get you anywhere. The whole point was to bring people with me. So we had to find a way forward. And I can remember the light bulb moment was in one of the meetings where one of the mums said, she said, here's our religion, but here's the way the world is. And it's important the parents know so they can teach the children the two sides. And they can put both ideas in their head and they can accept both views. And when she said that, I remember thinking, yes, that's it. That's how we do this work. It's not about telling children this is right, this is wrong. It's about telling children, yes, there's different ideas about this and we can coexist. Two ideas in their head. And an example of how this worked was once we'd been doing Outsiders for 2 years, I came out in Parkfield School and to no fanfare or comeback or histrionics. It was just fine. And I remember taking a boys to a football match at the Villa. I was driving the minibus and a boy said to me, year 6 boy, so, he's like 11, he said, can I ask you a question? He said, why did you choose to be gay? And I said, well, that's a great question. I'll answer it by asking you a question. Why did you choose to have brown skin? He said, I didn't choose to have brown skin. I said, I know. I didn't choose to be gay. It's just the way I am. And he said, can I ask you another question? I said, yes. And he said, in mosques, they tell us that you can't be gay, but you say you can be gay. So which one is it? And I said, that's a great question. And you're right. There's different ideas about this. And the best thing about living in the UK is that we can talk about this stuff. We can have debates and discussions. And we might actually end up disagreeing, but we can still have respect for each other. We can still get along. And I still, to this day, I can't think of a better answer to it, because what is the answer? Mosque isn't wrong, but I'm also not wrong. So what do? We coexist. We sit side by side, and we teach children, yeah, there's different ideas about this. That's how we get along. So it worked fantastically for 4 years until December the 24th, 2018. I'm not that old, 2018. When suddenly I had a message on my WhatsApp from a TA at my school who was Muslim and lives in the community. She said, I'm sorry, Andy, you've got to watch this. She said it's going to ruin your Christmas, and it did, but you need to watch it. Everyone's talking about it. It's going around it's going around the community like wildfire. And it was a YouTube video. And this is the first heads up that I've got that there might be a storm around the corner. It was a video of an Islamic conference from a couple of months ago, previously, where a woman is talking about RSE. And RSE was the Relationships and Sex Education Guidance that the government brought out and made statutory for schools in 2020. And there was consultation about it at the time. And in this talk, which lasts for 13 minutes, it's still on YouTube now, she talks about what RSE is going to mean for schools. And I've got some quotes here of what she said. She said, by teaching 4-year-olds about pornography, it's going to sexualize them. She said it's going to promote the homosexual agenda. It's a global initiative rolled out to all schools worldwide. Now, the problem is, for me, at this point, I was up for Global Teacher of the Year, which was wonderful, absolutely fantastic. I was the only UK teacher in the top 10, in fact. And I went to Dubai for the ceremony hosted by Hugh Jackman, which was absolutely amazing. I didn't win, but the winner got $1 million. You see, the protesters were saying, you see, global conspiracy. He's going to win $1 million to make your children gay. It all just fed into this conspiracy, this hysteria. It's very insidious, she was saying. It brainwashes our children. They're trying to split parent from child, taking away parental rights. You see, the problem was that there are some groups in society who want no sex education at all in schools, and LGBT equality education in schools. Now, there's no sex in No Outsiders, but there is LGBT equality reference, and I think people saw this as an opportunity to really, influence, education in the future. So we became a target, basically, and it was very, very difficult. I mean, for 6 months, we had protests, outside my school, up to 300, 400 people, many of whom weren't parents, certainly wasn't led by parents at my school, but, getting children involved. I can remember standing in my classroom and hearing a chant of 300 people, including children, chanting, "Get Mr. Moffatt out, get Mr. Moffatt out," which is heartbreaking, you know, to hear, and something that I'll never forget. And then, you know, you have social media, you know, WhatsApp groups springing up. I had moles in lots of them that would feed back to me, but half wished that I hadn't, because the stuff that came back was just awful, you know. So, you know, from the comical, like Mr. Moffatt is walking down the corridor, high-fiving children, saying I'm gay, to the frightening, like Mr. Moffatt told my daughter she was a girl trapped in a boy's body. Mr. Moffatt forced my child to sign an apology to him for going on the protest. You know, they're making models of sex in reception classes. You know, all the stuff that you have no control over at all. Really, really difficult. So what do you do about that? How do you get through that? So you have to just keep going and have faith that, you know, it's the right thing to do, and that it won't last forever. And you also focus on a positive, supportive parents, and there were many supportive parents. So, for example, there was one parent I remember. A mum came to see me, and I was getting lots of threats, and the police were involved. I wasn't allowed to see parents for about 4 months. But a mum came and said, "I want to see Mr. Moffatt because my son's being bullied, and he will always sort it out." And they wouldn't let her see me. And she said, "Well, I'm not leaving till I see him." And she sat in the front office for an hour and a half waiting to see me, because she wouldn't leave the building until she saw me. And eventually I said, "Oh, look, honestly, I'll just see her, it's fine. I'll sign a piece of paper to say I take responsibility, you know, if anything happens, just let me see her." So I saw her into my office, sat down, said, "Thank you for seeing me." She said, "Right, my son's not being bullied. I need to talk to you about no outsiders." And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is exactly what they warned me of. Where's my panic button? And she said, "No, you don't understand." She says, "You need to know I'm 100% behind you, and there are many, many with me." You know, and that's what you've got to hold on to. See, those parents were not vocal because they couldn't be. There was a lot of intimidation in the community. They couldn't be vocal, but they were absolutely, you know, behind the work the school was doing. And I'll tell you what else was interesting as well. I'm doing a PhD at the moment, and I spent a day in the archives in Birmingham Library. I wanted to find out whether is it the first time there's been protest outside schools? Because, you know, people on news were saying, "Oh, it's never happened before." Is that the truth? Well, actually, there were protests in the past outside schools. Can anyone guess what protests were about? In 1960s in Birmingham, there were protests about race in schools, about too many black children coming into inner city schools. And there's headlines. There's a headline here: "White parents warn we'll boycott coloured school. Give our children a fair chance." Another one: "Angry mothers visit school on colour issue." It's from 1965 in Birmingham schools. So, you know, it's happened before, and the language is exactly the same. "I'm not racist, but," you know, people were saying. So what's that show us about society? You know, because the people on those protests in the 1960s, I wonder what they feel today. Do they feel the same way, or have they moved on in their thinking? Have they now got black friends, even black members of their family? You know, society moves on, doesn't it? It doesn't stay static. It doesn't stay the same forever. You know, forever. It moves on. Ideas can shift, and I'm absolutely sure that's what's going to happen. You know, with this as well. You know, it won't last forever. Right, I'm just conscious of time, so I've got 10 minutes left before I do a Q&A. So I want to show you some of the books that I'm using, so you can see what I'm talking about. So this one I use in reception with 4-year-olds: Red Rockets and Rainbow Jelly. Nick and Sue. Nick likes apples, Sue likes pears. Yellow socks, yellow ducks. And every page, Nick and Sue like different things: dinosaurs, cars, aliens. But the last page says that Nick likes Sue and Sue likes Nick. What's the message for 4-year-olds? You can like different things, you can still be friends. This one, Blue Chameleon in reception, is about a chameleon who's lonely. He wants to make friends. Now he thinks you have to be the same colour as someone to be their friend. So he keeps changing colour and changing shape to look like them as well. But it never works. Now, in the end, he realizes actually you haven't got to change. You can just be yourself to make a friend. Elmer is in there. I'm sure any of you who've got children or schools will know Elmer. It's a perfect book. Oh, but do beware, people. I was told during the process this is a gay book. You see, it's got the rainbow flag on the front cover. What happens is a child could read that. It plants a seed in their mind, and they'll try being gay when they're 14. So be careful. You've got in year 2, Can I Join Your Club? Which is about a duck that wants to join a club. And he tries to join the lion club. Lion says, "Can you roar like a lion?" He can only go quack. So Lion says, "You can't join my club then." "Can you hiss?" says a snake. No, it can only go quack. You can't join my club. Can you trumpet like an elephant? Oh, we can't. You can only go quack. So can't join my club. So duck makes his own club up, duck club. But who comes along first? It's the tortoise comes along first. And the tortoise says, can I join your club? And duck says, I've got a question first. And the children think he's going to ask, can you quack like a duck? But it doesn't. The question is, do you want to be in a club with me? And tortoise says, yes, please. And duck says, application approved. Fantastic. And then a rabbit joins the club, and then everyone joins the club because you can't have too many friends. This is our house, Michael Rosen, in year 3. So 7-year-olds, he's got a house. You can't come in. It's all for me, he says. It's not for girls, not for small people like you, not for people like rabbits. People who are twins can't come in. People who wear glasses can't come in. After a bit, he goes to the toilet and everyone jumps into his house. Now, George comes back and he's got red hair. So what do they say to George? They say, you've got red hair. You can't come in our house. What does he say? Has a little cry. Then changes his mind. He says, this has people with red hair, said George, and girls, and small people, and twins, and people who wear glasses, and people like tunnels. This house is for everyone. I could go on. I was going to say 2 more. I'm going to say Julian is a mermaid in year 4. So 8, 9-year-olds. It's about a little boy called Julian who loves mermaids, and he wants to be one. Some beautiful artwork in here. And basically, this one is Nam. He's a bit sort of long suffering. She goes for the bath and says, be good. So while she's in the bath, Julian starts to dress up and actually takes her curtains and dresses in her curtains as well. There he is. And Nan comes out of the bath and doesn't look very happy. You can see her face there. And she goes to get something. And while she's gone, he's starting to feel a bit unconfident about what he's wearing. And see is sort of questioning, have I done the right thing? She comes back and she's got something behind her back. She says, come here, Julian. I did this to my class 2 weeks ago. I said, what's behind her back, do you think? And they said, a big stick. I said, let's hope not. What it is it's a pearl necklace. For me, Nana, for you, Julian, she says. And she gives it to him. Then she takes him outside in his mermaid costume. And they walk down the street and they go to a big parade, like this carnival type thing. Mermaid, she says, yes, like you, honey, let's join them. So, and that's it. So what a lovely, lovely book about acceptance. You see, no one's saying to Julian, why are you being like that? Why just like a mermaid? There's nothing, no dialogue like that at all. There's no justification. He can just be who he is, be who he wants to be. I'm going to say one more that I love. I use for the oldest children about democracy. Marlon Bundo. This was written by Mike Pence's rabbit. Do you know Mike Pence had a rabbit, the former VP? Mike Pence once voted against, well, probably was more than once to be fair, but he voted against gay marriage. And so someone wrote this book in America about his gay rabbit. And actually became a bestseller. And it's a wonderful book. I usually talk about democracy. So basically, Marlon Monday, it's all about how he's very happy in the Veep's house, and he meets Wesley. They fall in love, and they hop everywhere together, and they want to get married. And everyone goes, hooray! Apart from the stink bug, who turns up and says, "You can't get married," he says, and he says, "I'm in charge. Boy bunnies marry girl bunnies. Girl bunnies marry boy bunnies. This is the way it's always been. You are different, and different is bad." So what do the animals do? Well, they talk about, well, they say, well, we're all different, aren't we? I mean, I eat my sandwiches crust first, says the badger. Now, so they decided, well, what can we do? Let's get rid of stink bug. So they have an election, say, and they vote either for stink bug or not stink bug, and not stink bug wins. So they kick stink bug out. No, boom, stink bug. Boy bunnies can't marry boy bun. You are not in charge. And then Wesley and Marlon get married, and that's the end of the story. So I use that to talk about democracy. How do you change things that aren't that aren't the way you want them? It's democracy. It's voting. I'll just end with a lovely bit of work from a child in my year 6 class in the school I am at the moment, who following that lesson we all wrote a little a piece, and this child wrote, "How does democracy work?" She said, "Your reign is nearly over, Stinkbug. Rules are changing, and so is the animal that's in charge. We will vote. The 2 options are Stinkbug or no Stinkbug. Vote for no Stinkbug if you think difference is unique. The same gender should be able to marry the same gender. Democracy is the solution." And that's written by the badger who eats the crusts first on a sandwich. So there you go. I think I'll leave that there. I've got so much more I could tell you, but we got Q&A, so we can I can taste more stuff in the later on. Thank you very much.
Okay, if you could just mute yourself for a moment, Andrew. So thank you very much indeed for a really extraordinary talk. And what we're going to do now is we're going to have a short break for about 5 or 6 minutes, during which I will put you all into breakout rooms. There'll be 5 to a room. You'll be mixed up fairly well at random. And I'd like you to talk among yourselves about Andrew's talk and about what it means to you, and come up with some questions that we can put to him, your group can put to him afterwards. And when we come back into the main room in 5 or 6 minutes, I'll ask one person from each group. You will have to decide who that's going to be, your scribe, as it were, to put your question or 2 questions into the chat, and then we'll go through them then. And yeah, so I'm going to put you into breakout rooms, and we'll see you again in 5 or 6 minutes. So I'm going to ask Andrew a question now. If you have questions, it would be very helpful if you just wrote them into chat. If you already want to say it yourself in words, say that in chat, and we'll come to that. So get writing. And Andrew, I'd like to ask you, we were talking just now during the breakout session about how you frame this is so important, the words you use. And one word that came a bit unstuck was the word celebration. Could you tell me a bit more about that?
Yes, definitely. So during the protests, I had a letter from a vicar, actually, who is the governor of a school in Cheshire, and his school does No Outsiders, and they love it, and they're very supportive. Many schools do No Outsiders, and he wrote a letter to say, as a vicar, I support No Outsiders, but I do find it uncomfortable to be asked to celebrate LGBT. I wonder if you thought about maybe, how you feel of accepting that I can tolerate it. I can tolerate it as a matter of faith, but I don't feel able to celebrate it. Maybe could we have a conversation? And I remember at the time thinking, quite annoyed actually, thinking, what? No, I'm not happy with this. You tolerating me. I don't want to be tolerated. It's like putting up with somebody. But actually, that letter really, really helped, because the perception in my own school at the time, where the protests were, the perception was that we were forcing Muslim children to celebrate LGBT. Now, I can say categorically that we were not doing that. There were no gay pride marches through the corridors. There's no rainbow flags around the school. We're not celebrating LGBT, but that was the perception. So I had to find a way to sort of think, well, okay, well, how do I bridge this? How do I step back from this? And I came back to that letter from the vicar, because he was saying, he was asking to always be allowed to use the word tolerate. Well, I don't want to go that far, but maybe we don't have to use the word celebrate. Maybe we change the whole language to make it accessible for people. I'm thinking, what other words can we use? Because schools often say we celebrate diversity. But what does that mean, actually? Practically, it doesn't mean anything, does it? Well, how do you do that? Do you have parties? What does it mean? It doesn't mean anything. So what can you have instead? Maybe we embrace diversity. We accept diversity. It just is in our school. So I wrote an updated scheme with some new lesson plan and stuff, and I have a chapter in there called Tolerate, Celebrate, Accept. My argument is that we don't need to use the word celebrate, for this work. In order to make it accessible for everyone, maybe accept is a better word. Maybe that's about embracing is a better word. And I think that's helped actually to bring people on board. And it's all about finding ways to bring people on board.
Thank you very much. A good question. We've got some questions appearing in chat now. Some people have asked how widespread these sort of inclusive programs are. And I would add to that question, does it matter whether they are a secular school or have a religious basis?
So No Outsiders was always a hobby for me. I was always a main student teacher. I never want to go freelance. It's not. I don't want to be my job. It was always a hobby. But suddenly, when a protest happened, the demand for information about and training about No Outsiders just increased tenfold. And I suddenly realised, to my horror, that I'd never bothered, because I had no reason to sort of patent the name, to buy the name No Outsiders. If the protesters had been clever, they would have bought the name. They would have, registered the name. Then they could have stopped me from doing it. So I very quickly registered the name No Outsiders under my name, And then I thought, well, I'm going to make a charity. Because people were saying to me, can I donate? There was nothing to donate to. So I set up a charity. So consequently, since that happened, Outsiders it's quite big really across the country. I can't tell you exact numbers because I honestly don't know, because there's no register for No Outsiders. I've deliberately not ever gone down the lines of schools, paying to be a not so school or registering. I spent my life as a teacher collecting evidence folders to prove that I've done this thing in my school. I don't want to go down that route. I say, if you want to be an outsider school, you can be an outsider school. I trust you to be an outsider school. So I'm always hearing of schools that are not outsider schools. People on Twitter follow me and put up posts. I can tell you that we sell lanyards on my website that teachers wear, and we've sold more than 3,000 of these lanyards. So in the last 6 months. So that would give you some indication of the amount of people that are doing this work in schools. It's very. I would say it is growing all the time. Today I had a talk in a school in Rome this afternoon. This morning I taught to students in Liverpool. On Monday I'm doing a global conference for an hour. That's like 1,000 people to tune in. So the demand is there really. And in terms of your question, Simon, no, it doesn't matter. The framework that the schools have. Certainly initially, I think there were less C of E Catholic schools, but now I would say that there are as many Catholic schools and C of E schools that aren't doing this work because they see it as accessible.
Thank you very much. That's very interesting. This is a program for primary schools. I mean, I guess it's critically important to get them at primary school, even before primary school, to get this ethos, which is very easy for children to understand because they've all been excluded at some stage themselves. What about secondary schools? That's one of the questions. The sort of adolescent confusion stages and so on, and how does it fit in there?
Yeah, and that's a very good question. I do get asked that a lot by secondary school teachers. And I used to say, yeah, I'm going to write one. But to be honest, I just haven't got the time because I'm a full-time class teacher, and it's difficult. What I need is secondary schools to take initiative and think about how can it fit into our culture. Certainly the ethos, absolutely. I know secondary schools do this because I hear from them. I have a assembly pictures that I use. So basically you start a day with assembly and people can use it in tutor groups, and the whole point is the pictures of good community cohesion type stories from around the world that makes the outsiders real life stories. So I know some secondary schools use those as tutor group starters, and they would definitely be able to fit in with the with the ethos. But in terms of a curriculum, the picture books, obviously you couldn't use those in secondary schools. So it is my hope that secondary schools will work out a way that they can access this as well in the future.
Do you think possibly that adolescents are more prone to be exclusive of people, and when the hormones kick in, they develop these awful tendencies?
Well, it's my hope that we are working with children from 4 to 11 and developing like an inner core of a belief in diversity and a confidence in diversity that won't leave them when they get to secondary school. There are things that have stayed with me from my childhood. ABBA, basically, I mentioned before. I was still obsessed with ABBA, still obsessed with Eurovision. Now that was created in my formative years. So that stayed with me. So can this stay with children? Because it's if we've really embedded, and give children this fire inside them of, I believe this is right. But will it disappear when they're 14? I have confidence. I don't think it will. I think children are naturally inclusive, and we just need to give them the mechanisms and the confidence to keep that fire inside them.
Yeah. Several people have commented, very high praise from the people writing in chat. Several people have commented that this was extraordinarily stressful for you, because it was your baby and you'd set it up, and then suddenly it all fell apart and people were having a go at you in a really horrible way. How did you cope with that? People have asked. That must have been a dark time. You thought it would go away, but it might not have done.
No, you're right. And even up until, I mean, yesterday I had a message from the team at the mat, the CEO of the mat, who said, had an email, ring me urgently. And of course, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, it's happened again. It's going to kick off again. And it wasn't. It's about something completely different, but it's always like back in your mind, you expect it to, oh, it's coming back, it's coming back. And even though when the protest stopped, we thought they would be returning. The protesters told us they were not going to give in, not going to stop. But it did stop. It did stop. And I think it stopped because the protesters realised that they haven't got support. I think they felt that this would spread across the country. But actually, I think most people are not like that. Most people actually want inclusion, and understand what this is. And although, yes, it was an incredibly difficult time, you have to focus on what came out of it. And what came out of it was a massive platform, where suddenly I was being asked to do more training than I've ever done before. People were emailing to say, can I give you donations? People were emailing to say, how can I get involved? Schools suddenly were saying, what is this No Outsiders? So you've got to focus on that. And there's just on that, so I was asked to lead Birmingham Pride during the protest. It was in May. I remember when they asked me, thinking that's just absolutely amazing. Birmingham Pride, the theme was No Outsiders that year. And I led it with LGBT Muslims, two LGBT Muslims, Kakan and Saima, who had been really supported during the protest. And I wanted to make a statement about Birmingham. Look, Birmingham Pride is being led by Muslims, LGBT Muslims. And I think it's the first Pride March that's ever been led by Muslims. Now, I thought after that happened, I would get kickback from the parents in my school. And I was a bit nervous the week after going to school. And there was a bit of there was one reaction. And I was quite emotional telling the story. But basically, I was on the playground and a mum came up to me. She said, Mr. Moffatt, that march last Saturday, wasn't that fantastic? She said, it's the first time I've been to a Pride March. I took my two boys and Mr. Moffatt were right at the front when he walked past. And we were jumping up and down. My boys were jumping around there shouting, Mr. Moffatt, Mr. Moffatt. So, but it was so loud because you couldn't hear us. So, but we were so proud to see you. It was absolutely wonderful. I can't wait till next year. Now that is a Muslim mum who took her two boys to a gay Pride March. And she wasn't frightened about influence or them being gay or, she wanted to show them, diversity alive and well in Birmingham. So that shows that this is all worth it. We're changing the world slowly, brick by brick. And that's what you've got to hold on to.
Thank you very much. Somebody's raised the question of children who have emotional problems or even mental health problems, for example, severe anxiety, or I guess pathological shyness. Do you include those as people who are different who need to be included, or is that something you, in a sense, it might not be welcome to draw attention to that particular difference?
No, absolutely. Mental health is key because if you are suffering from mental health, then you are an outsider, aren't you? You can make yourself an outsider. Actually, you can feel like an outsider. So it's all linked in. I mean, certainly, in terms of the official protected characteristics, don't mention mental health, do they? It's race, religion, sex, gender reassignment, but in schools, anyone can be an outsider, and it's our job to make sure that no one feels like that. So yeah, we talk about mental health and well-being a lot, particularly during lockdown. Actually, lockdown, a big emphasis on making sure children felt they belonged. It all fits in. It's all connected.
Yeah. When I was at school, perhaps I should stop that one. It was a long time ago. But when I go into schools now, usually to teach in RE classes about humanism, I notice there doesn't seem to be any obvious cliqueiness. You see people of different ethnic backgrounds mixing together, not, you know, perhaps they're more so with their own, but they all seem to mix together. And one thing I was surprised to see was that there's some boys who were overtly camp and, you know, wearing their feelings on their sleeve, as it were, for all to see. Of course, for every one of those was probably 10 who were keeping it quiet. But that is something unheard of, and it must surely be a good sign. Somebody's written in the chat that the Mary Webb School at Ponsonby, which is a good school, they actually have an LGBTQ page on their website. And so they have a whole, that's a secondary school, a whole school approach. So that's good.
Yes, I think the world is changing. You know, children feel, children need to be, it's often the adults that are scared about this, not the young people. You know, we can learn from how unafraid many of our young people are about this, you know, because they've grown up with different influences, haven't they? When I was growing up in the 80s, there was no one that was gay that I knew of. You know, we had John Inman, you know, I being Sir, you had Larry Grayson, they didn't talk about being gay, did they? You know, it was a caricature, you know. If you had Boy George, but again, he wasn't into about being gay, you know, there was no one really. Whereas now, young people do have gay role models, you know, Graham Norton, you know, one of the highest paid entertainers, you know, Alan Carr, you know, there are people, Sandy Toskick, you know, there are people out there who are visible. It's all about visibility.
Yes. Okay, so I think at this stage, one comment from Nick, who is our anarchist humanist party member, and he comments, says, when I was at school, I found most of the kids around me to be barbaric. I preferred to be an outsider. Well, you can do that if you're strong, but not if you're, if you're sensitive.
You're allowed to be.
So at this stage, I'm going to put myself back onto gallery view. And has anybody got any particular comments or questions? If you do, just raise your hand like this, and you can come up and say them. Any particular comments about the talk or how you feel about it, or any questions? Okay, Elaine Hanson, why don't you unmute yourself?
I thought it was interesting, Andrew, when you were talking about the boy who was about 11 when you were on the bus, asking you about, you know, being gay and all the rest of it, being Muslim. That child, I'm not saying that particular one, but a Muslim child who's been told by the family that you cannot be gay, it's against our religion, is still going to suffer if they find they are, aren't they?
Yeah.
And I guess there's nothing much you can do about that, is there?
No,
and
but
I was going to say, perhaps if you were a secondary school teacher and a boy came to you and said, you know, a Muslim boy, and said, look, I think I'm gay, what would you advise me? It would be terribly difficult, I should think, given what his parents are telling him.
Yeah, so what we can do is demonstrate to the child that yeah, those ideas exist, but not everyone thinks like that. That's the message, you know, that there are different people. That's why that's part of the reason why I deliberately, you know, asked Simon Cacaron to lead the Gay Pride March for me, because, you know, I wanted them to be visible. You know, I wanted children to see. I wasn't allowed to say in my school, you know, I felt I couldn't say in my school, you can be gay and Muslim. You know, people were saying that I was saying that to children, but I never said that to children. I thought it was just too contentious for me to say. But by going on the Gay Pride March and being on the front of the Birmingham Mail and, you know, being on all over television with LGBT Muslims, I'm making it very clear, you know, without saying it, that you can be, you know, or well, I shouldn't, even now I feel I shouldn't say that. I'm making it very clear that there are people who identify as LGBT and Muslim. So I'm always choosing my words very carefully.
Any more questions or comments? Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Yeah, something that just struck me was when you went for your interview at Parkfield, is just the reaction of the head, you know, who then hired you. You know, you were completely open about, you know, what you'd done elsewhere, what you were hoping to do, why you chose a 95% or something like that Muslim entry. And she, well, you said she was interested in what you were proposing, but in other words, she had her eyes open, presumably, about not only about how you together could introduce something really interesting with the parents and with the pupils, but that also at some point there might be people who would kind of rile against it, and as indeed they did. But so I guess, I mean, the thing about the difficult times, I mean, I presume that one of the things that from what I saw in the media at the time is that the school itself, sorry, was behind you the whole time with support, and indeed the Department for Education came out very strongly in support of No Outsiders, and I thought that was really fantastic, that would make such a big difference to you to have such clear, you know, 100% backing from the powers that be.
Well, yeah, the school absolutely were. The DFE less so, actually. DFE didn't like the protests and would have wanted us to really just to sort of the protests to go away. But the school were, yeah, absolutely incredibly, you know. And the reason why I think I was hired, you know, was because, well, the job was behaviour, and you know, it was my skills in behaviour as opposed to me doing this work, you know. But I wanted to make sure she wasn't going to back away. You know, I didn't want to. The reason why I told her up front is because I didn't want to get there, then the school say, well, you ain't doing that. You know, so I wanted to be absolutely clear, you know, here's what I want to do. You are okay, aren't you? But yeah, but certainly during the protests, yeah, the school were, and the head teacher in particular was an absolute rock, you know, and just wonderful.
Thank you. Peter, the other Peter, you had a question, or was it Jeff?
I'll unmute. I just wanted to say, first of all, it's enormously encouraging listening to you talk, Andrew. And like somebody earlier, I mean, I went to school in the 1950s and 60s, and I had an awful time because I was gay, but I didn't have, you know, when I was beginning to realize it, all I ever heard was really unpleasant stuff. I was bullied mercilessly, and it could have just done with one person just letting me know that I could actually raise the subject and talk, because I had no one to turn to. So that leads me to when I became a school teacher, and I'd come out through Gay Liberation Front, which I know you will know, but pretty radical organisation. And a few years later, I landed a job at a southeast London school in Charlton Boys, a rough, multi-ethnic. I don't think there was a religion that wasn't represented at school, where parents came from different religions or no religion. And I was photographed on a picket about stereotypes against Larry Grayson in 1975, and in my probationary year, good choice, and I was out. Now, one of the things I now take from that is that the authority were not supportive. That was the Inner London Education Authority. They didn't actually say we're not, they didn't actually say that. They just made sure that when I did leave that school, it's a long story, but basically when I did leave the school, I went on to a compulsory transfer rather than somewhere else. And I was just moved a lot until finally I couldn't cope. But one of the things I did notice was the boys at the school. I was terrified when I went in. I can't tell you what was happening to my stomach. I was really worried. I thought my job was up. When I went into my year 9 class, they had all made little banners. They were waving them. And you know what they really wanted to do? They wanted to ask questions. And all I said was, don't ask too personal a question, I will not answer it. But they actually didn't. I had 80 minutes, I'm telling you, in Charlton, 80 minutes of total focus and silence was very unusual. Mm. But one of the things they had noticed even before, which I think harks back to when you began your talk, was that they knew that I did not tolerate any prejudice of any sort in my classroom. I challenged it, but also that if they raised a subject, I said, yeah, let's talk about it, lads. Let's talk. Let's put a line down the board, this side, and let people chat. But what I think that taught me was there are people at the top who will make changes, but like many other things in society, it's the people, it's the kids themselves who are making the changes in the schools. And one of the things I think that's important about the kid who comes from a religious background where there's real intolerance, and some of those backgrounds, Catholic, fundamentalist Christian, Jehovah's Witness, Mormons, there's a lot of prejudice. But when they come across information or stuff that's talked about in schools, they may well not be able to feel supported at home. The main message is coming from all their community and home, but they are getting a different message in school. And you never know where that is going to go. And certainly, you know, my cousin married into Islam. Her son came out and she said, there's no question, he's my son. So my view is that the change will happen from the bottom, like most change, but there will be wonderful people like yourself out there who, yes, learn from some mistakes along the way, don't we all? I hope. But what we can do is look at the last 50 years for LGBTQ people. Phenomenal changes. Change happens, but we do have to work for it, and I'll stop there.
Well, can I say thank you for that? And I feel like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, you know, with your with your experience and what you did in the 1970s, you know, and that really is brave, you know. So just thank you for your work and for standing up, you know. And you're right about change came from the bottom, you know, not from the top. The DFB were not supportive, really, you know. That's a fact. The DFB actually asked my school to tell him not to go on a gay pride march, not to lead it, because it might inflame tensions. Can't just walk. He can walk in the pride, maybe could ask him not to lead it, and credit to my school for not asking me to do that. No, the DFE guidance, you know, at the moment, you know, talk says about schools should make their teaching sensitive and age appropriate. At the point where schools consider appropriate teaching LGBT, they should fully integrate it. That's it. So that's not actually, you know, that's the guidance from the DFE. You know, at the point in which we feel it's appropriate, which is not at all the same, is it, as saying schools should teach this. You know, so the change will come from below. It's about schools making the decision to do this work. It's the right thing to do.
Thank you. Andrew Brown. And after Andrew Brown, we'll come to Amanda.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, Andrew, like you, I think we're probably about the same age. I grew up in the 80s, and things were pretty horrendous then for anyone who was, in quotes, different. And I now see that with my kids at school, that things are radically different, radically better. So we're obviously on the right trajectory. But I was just wondering, you know, I think we've seen, you know, the political events in the last 5 years or so seem to have given license to some pretty intolerant views, and people seem to be a bit bolder about expressing those views. I just wondered if you'd seen that reflected in schools. Are those views kind of filtering down? Are kids hearing their parents being more intolerant, and is that filtering through, or are they a bit more kind of impervious to that?
Well, if they are, I'm not hearing it, because I think that as kids, you know, in the schools that I'm in, because the no outsider study is so strong, You know, I think children, I'm not hearing children say that kind of stuff, you know, because they, now you could argue that's because they know what to say in school and they don't say it. That might be the case. But you know, the children that I am teaching, I find to be incredibly inclusive and have a real sense of justice. I think all children do, actually. Children have if you've ever done playground duty, you know, then you'll recognise this sense of justice that children have. Like, this is fair, that's not fair, you know, and children really, I think inclusion drips out of them, really. So yeah, look, I'm not naive, and I certainly, I know, I agree that we can't be complacent, take stuff for granted. But you know, I still have incredible hope for the future.
Yeah. Amanda.
There you go. Hi, Andrew. That was just a lovely talk, heartwarming. It made me have a little lump in my throat a number of times. So I wanted to mostly say thank you. You answered my question earlier because I wanted to make sure that you were going into schools and inspiring people, because we really need people like you, trailblazers, change makers, brave people. And so I just wanted to say that, but also maybe off on a little tangent, I don't know. I don't know how you feel about the way that the COVID restrictions has made it harder for people to connect. So not only are they not allowed to touch anymore, but you can't really see faces as much, you know, there's no smiles, it's harder to build relationships. And when I think back to when I was at school, it wasn't like a very touchy-feely, you know, when you're little, you do, you touch, you feel, you play, when you're messing around, you touch each other. But as you get to teenagers, there wasn't much of that going on. And it always warmed my heart as an adult, seeing teenagers in schools greeting each other with kisses on the cheek and hugs, and men, you know, boys hugging men, hugging each other. Things that I didn't see at school. I don't know if anybody else has experienced that, you know, the change that went over the next a couple of decades. And it makes me really sad to think that we might lose that. Now we're training children at such a young age to keep socially distant. And I wonder how that, you know, will that have a ripple effect on people connecting with people that might have been harder to connect with in the first place. I'm not sure if I'm wording it right, but what I'd like to see, and I'm starting to sort of think about it now really, is as much effort being put in by the government, by the schools, by parents, to bring hugging back into schools and hugging back into the community and touching and feeling safe again once it is safe. I'd like to see as much effort put into bringing that back as it was made in separating people. And I just wondered if you thought that that might be related or connected in any way.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And for the last 10 months, I've been doing a weekly newsletter for schools called Agents of Hope. And the whole point of Agents of Hope is to say that you know, during lockdown, it's teachers' jobs to be agents of hope for our children. And whatever we feel inside about COVID and about the future, the children have got to see that we are the confident ones, that we know it's going to be okay in the end. They won't last forever, you know. And we do 5 assemblies a day, and I've been videoing them and putting them on the YouTube channel, Celsius Mac YouTube channel, where a daily assembly for 6 minutes, where I tell an interesting story from around the world, you know, about community cohesion, a hopeful story. You know, the one that's most popular, had about 3,000 views, was a story about a photo competition where 2 penguins are on a little rock thing, and you can see the photos from the back, and one of them has got his fin or his flipper around the shoulder of the other one, and they're looking at pretty lights. And the story behind that was that the penguins have both lost loved ones and they're comforting each other. And so we use this picture to show, look, even animals can comfort each other. You know, we can't hug today, but you know, when lockdown's over, who's the first person you're going to hug? You know, and we talk all the time. And in my class, we talk all the time about, you know, it's not going to last forever, isn't it? You know, and right now we've got to sit in rows, and you know, and we've got to wash our hands, you know, before and after play, and you know, all the time. You know, but it's not going to last forever, is it? You know, and so yes, it's all about, you know, to children knowing that, you know, they're coming out of this, you know, and you know, oh, imagine a party when we come out to this, and who are you going to hug first, and who are you going to, you know, all this. And so it's about being agents of hope for the kids, basically. That's what we need to be.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you for that. Cheers.
Any more questions or comments? Getting on for time to end. Well, perhaps I just...
Oh, I've got Jude at the bottom.
I was just going to say, sorry, I was just going to say, I love the books. That's just one sentence.
Thank you. That's great to hear.
That was what I was going to say. That was one of the best bits, reading from those books. I'm going to buy those for my grandchildren, who are about the age they're coming into looking at. I think what's the most impressive thing tonight hasn't been the subject, but I think the speaker. I think Andrew is a remarkable man.
Yeah.
He is immensely brave. I think he's pressed on where many other people would have given up. He is passionate, he's compassionate, he's inspiring, and I think he's the best sort of teacher, a teacher with a true vocation, who really cares, who loves his pupils, and I think that's great. Wish we had more like you around. So I'd like to thank you on behalf of all of us for a really fascinating talk, and if any of you know people who wanted to see this but couldn't come, it has been recorded, and if you get in touch with me, I can send them a copy.